What's up, everyone? This is the 5th episode of the Deliberate Talks, and hello to each and everyone who tunes in religiously every week to hear me, Dakshin Adyanthaya, chat with some extraordinary individuals from across the world. And today we have one such lovely person and truly one of my favorite content creators. And today with her, we will be conversing about social media content. So before we jump into our dialogue, here are a few interesting stories for you. Did you know, firstly, Despacito is the most viewed YouTube video with 6.8 billion viewers as of June 2020. Secondly, Yusaku Mizawa, a Japanese billionaire, has the record of the most retweeted tweet. But interestingly, he had to shell out more than $900,000 in gifts to his 6.1 million followers to help him achieve this victory. And finally, a picture of an egg is the most liked picture on Instagram with a mind-boggling number of 54.3 million likes. Whew. And there's so much to talk about content, and every time we speak to a new content creator, the mind just shapes better. So let's go straight to meeting our guest today. But before that,
this is the Deliberate Talks weekly podcast, powered by the Pixelated Egg Digital Ventures. Tune in every week to learn something new about digital marketing and entrepreneurship. And now, over to the voice of your host, Dakshin Adyanthaya. Enjoy the show.
And today, we have the head of content at Weed, an online video editing platform. This wonderful lady lives in South Florida with her husband and her dog, who loves to make special appearances on her Instagram stories. Well, when she's not in office, she blogs and runs DianaGetsSocial on Instagram and TikTok to share her experience-based learnings and lessons on social media marketing. Here is the ever so energetic, pumped up Diana Briceño. Hey Diana, excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for being a part of the Deliberate Talks podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, all good here. Just was enjoying my morning coffee. So always a necessary part of the morning. How about you?
Brilliant. Doing great. So like I said, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Like me, you have a lot of fans already on your social media platform. And I talk to a lot of people about your content. Every time I talk about you, there's a sense of interest for many of them to become like you, but they suffer from a very interesting mindset which they call as the social hideousness. Now, what that means is basically they're worried about how they look in front of the camera and, what they might invite in form of trouble. But what was your mindset like when you were showing your face in front of the camera for the very first time? What is the kind of advice that you would give for people to overcome this particular mindset?
Oh, well, I definitely understand what you mean by that term and everything, because I think even as you grow, that's kind of a mindset that you always have in the back of your mind. Maybe not as powerful as a beginning, but I do remember when I started, I had all the same thoughts that everybody has, looking at other people and feeling like I might need to be like them and look a certain way. And it held me back here and there to make some content, but it's kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. I mean, you kind of just have to go for it and just do it. I don't think there's entirely a super easy way to do it other than just getting started, making those videos and going through that uncomfortable learning curve. Because I think what happens is people look at others that have been doing it for a while and they want to go from point A to point B without experiencing that middle section that's messy and it's uncomfortable, but needs to happen in order for you to not just conquer it, but also figure out how to be yourself on camera.
But what about that very first video that you made? What was that like?
It was embarrassing, actually. It was an Instagram story that I made, and people were curious about what I looked like and what I sounded like. And I made a story. And I mean, I got pretty much positive feedback for the most part. But sometimes when you get just one person that says something negative, you focus on that. And I remember somebody telling me that I was really awkward and I looked really anxious. And that made me a little nervous, thinking, oh no, because this person was like saying that my eyes were moving really weird on camera. and I didn't realize that, but then I feel like after that I was moving my eyes even more and probably more weird. But I mean, I got over it. I just kept doing it over and over again. And, you know, eventually I think I'm okay now.
Mm-hmm. And so I've seen a lot of your videos where you've transformed yourself literally from the way you portray yourself on Instagram to how you portray yourself on TikTok. You know, the TikTok sees a more crazier side of you. Is that a conscious decision on how you portray yourself on TikTok, completely different from Instagram, which you more use from a business point of view or from a teaching point of view?
I think it kind of happened by accident in a way. So I have a lot of content that doesn't appear on my profile right now on TikTok because I've archived it. Well, not archived. I guess on TikTok, you just make it private. Instagram is archive. But I started on there making a bunch of really random videos like dancing. Because, you know, the first thing that you see people dancing on the platform and you think that's what I have to do. So I started doing that and I realized, you know what, I'm not a dancer. And I found other people that were in my space that were teaching things. And I realized how it was very bite-sized, very just easy to digest content. It wasn't really diving into the intricacies as much as, say, like an Instagram carousel can or an IGTV can. So with time and with just creating a bunch of content on there, I began to realize that what people want on that platform is more very simple, very bite-sized lessons in a bit of a more entertaining format. But you don't need to be entertaining like dancing or telling jokes. I'd say it's more about being a better storyteller and making it count because it's such a fast-paced platform with like 15-second videos, 1-minute videos.
Yeah, true. But you know, going back to that conversation of the consciousness part of it, another integral part of content includes a lot of rejections and feedback. You know, growing up to this, we all feel that our content is the very best. And, you know, at that particular moment, we feel furious when it gets rejected. Did you experience any of these and how did you overcome this thinking?
By trying to really not take it so personally. You know, it's so easy to get detached to work that we've done because we think something sounds really cool or it looks really cool. But at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the people that we're trying to serve through our content. So if we can find ways to just emotionally distance ourselves from this critique and really just view things objectively, that's the way you progress. There's always going to be those moments where, it hurts whenever you hear these comments, but don't let it stop you. Because you're going to hear critiques from your audience, from your clients, or from your employers, you know, if you're working in this space in your career. But you need to be able to take those criticisms and see what are the truths that are in there so you can actually apply them and do better every single post.
Yeah? So tell me about your worst criticism that you have ever received.
Oh my God, I'm trying to think the worst criticism I've got. I think somebody called something I designed ugly, a job that I had a while back. It was probably in the beginning of my career, back when I was like intern or social media coordinator level. And honestly, I look back at my work back then and it was ugly. So they were right.
But back then, how did you take that?
You know, I was probably saying profanities in my mind, but I was like, okay, I'll change it.
Right. And what about those social media content pieces? You know, rejection prevails there as well. And every time you put up something, you know, you end up getting unwanted comments or those people who lead to your DMs with those creepy comments. Tell me about how do you deal with that and what do you respond to them really?
Well, the opinions, if it's like a constructive criticism, there's a way to say things, right? Some people know how to give constructive critique, and basically the way I was saying before, just seeing if there's a truth to it and trying to be better. There are people who are jerks, the way that they say things. I've just found the best way to kind of combat that is to fight back with kindness and just make them realize that at the end of the day, they're talking to a person on this platform, but that you value the feedback. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are some people who, it's rare, I haven't gotten this, but I've seen other people that get, a lot of very harsh comments, things said in a really rude way. In that case, don't even respond to people like that. Some people just want to spark outrage and they're not willing to truly listen and be a better person. They just want to kind of poke and prod at others. And then as far as the people that are just being inappropriate in the DMs, usually I just ignore them. Sometimes I like to just mess with them and just like waste their time, just like they're wasting my time, just for a laugh sometimes. I don't know like how much I can say on this podcast, but I'll find like a PG example. So I don't know if you have this juice in India, but it's a brand called Naked. Okay. And so somebody asked for naked pictures and I sent them a bunch of pictures of the naked juice. Oh, actually I have another good one.
Please go ahead.
Somebody was asking for nudes and I sent them a bunch of nude colors, like color palettes.
What follows after that, How do they respond?
They call me like all kinds of names. They get very upset and they say that I'm the one wasting their time.
But these are the people who end up on your DMs. They would never appreciate your content or,
Oh yeah, they don't care about the content. Yeah, they just like, I'll talk about social media strategy and they'll respond with something completely unrelated. And it's just kind of funny to see where it goes sometimes. Yeah, I gotta have fun sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, let's move into understanding your client conversations now instead. We work in different markets and there are different types of clients we come across, especially someone who isn't even active on social media and still is the decision maker in the company, would still end up giving you feedback on content without even knowing what the content means or what the trends on digital mediums are. What are your thoughts on how social media has evolved over the years? And tell me your process about when you started working for different clients of yours. You ended up creating a lot of valuable pieces of content, which also resulted in a great sales or went viral. And how has your approach been to this kind of work?
Okay, so, actually right now I am actually not taking clients. I work for Veed. Right. But it's funny because they were my client. There's going to be people that just aren't a fit for the way that you run things. And when you're getting started, it's very easy to just, take anything that comes your way. And as a result, you put yourself in nightmarish client situations, which is okay sometimes. If you really need the money, then sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But if you have been in nightmare situations before with clients that just aren't receptive to truly understanding how things work, then find a way to create a process that you can filter out the bad ones and find the good ones. And also realize that if a client doesn't understand why a post didn't achieve X result, it's not so much the client's fault. Mm-hmm. It's on the service provider to educate the client as well. So that's something that, for example, with Veed, so I actually got to know them on a customer service call. And from there, they were really curious about how I was creating like a lot of my video content. They liked it. They became my client for like a period of 3 months. And then I started working with them as an employee. But before they became my clients, when I was more in like the discovery phase of everything, I really wanted to make sure that they understood the way that I approach content and how I think about everything. And so that way, if they are scared in a way of the way that I approach things and I say, okay, like you can't expect results overnight. And I try to scare them away sometimes. Then that means that we're probably going to be a good fit. If they're still saying crazy stuff like, oh, like I want this to go viral tomorrow, then okay, this person's not going to be a good fit. So definitely look at your past experiences to see what kind of questions you can ask people to kind of just screen them. And what are the things that you yourself have to bring up to educate the client. So have a clear outline of what your process looks like in order for you to go from point A to point B. And especially in this line of work, you don't want to guarantee that I can get you 10,000 followers in X amount of time, because that's never something that you can always predict. But you can help them get there, but don't guarantee anything like that. That will set you up for disappointment.
Interesting. And can you extend this conversation with the case study that you have worked for one of your clients, the most successful one?
It's definitely been a lot of teamwork between the clients and I. So there are companies that aren't ready for social media. So you need to have a good product or service, and you need to have good customer service. You have to have a overall, good business going on in order for social media to actually complement what you're doing. So because I think Veed is the best example because they've really been super prepared all around. They did a lot of user research that helped me a lot to understand where everybody was coming from. They'd already done a lot of work in the back end. They have great customer service, a great product. So it was really easy for me to go in and really build content that is aligned with their audience. And because they already had clients of their own, it was also very easy to pinpoint who are some people that can essentially be advocates for the brand. So like user generated content, or finding micro influencers or macro influencers that can create content for the brand to really just help create that explosive growth. That especially actually has been a really big part, I think, for the results that we get from social media, is finding those opportunities for social proof, whether it's at UGC or the influencers.
And when you say UGC, user-generated content, there's a lot of conversations around how to go about getting that UGC for your brand. So what do you think is the right way of encouraging more users to contribute content for your brand?
I think the best way to generate it, besides, of course, making sure that you have that, smoothly running, that great product or service, is to make sure that they know that you exist on social media. Because basically when I started with Veed's account, it probably took, I think, about a month or so before people started tagging us, because we have a lot of users that were interacting with us before through email, which was like our primary channel of communication before we introduced social media. So when we began posting on social media consistently and engaging some people that we located, like, you can search some people up by the most active users on Veed and look them up and see, oh, okay, cool. Like this person's on Instagram, start interacting with them, interact with social media managers. That kind of just put our name out there, and people realize that the brand that they are already working with is on there, and they're encouraged to create content around us. And you yourself can do it too, So like if you have like an agency or something, a company name that you work under, like maybe you can have like your employees or anybody, or a friend even, or family members, start to create some content about you, if that's possible, if that works out for a situation, so that you can share it, because sometimes people need to see that other people are doing it before they feel comfortable making some content of their own.
And of course, like you mentioned, where people, if they see a couple of comments, they intend to comment back thinking a lot of people are engaging with this post. So that kind of gives them a confidence to also put in their opinion there. But this is the community's mindset. From a creator's mindset, there's a very fascinating story about one of these friends of mine who I spoke to, who was a creator in a very popular content portal. And he used to discuss about how he used to take this fantastic ideas to his colleagues. And every time it used to be rejected. And they would give a feedback saying, you know what, go back and create those dogs and cat videos, because that's the one that goes viral. And eventually, after a point of time, he did give up, started creating more of cat and dog videos, which, yes, of course, went viral. But have you been in similar situations like these over the years?
I think I've been in kind of a similar situation. I wouldn't say so much that the content that the other people wanted to post was getting results. This was more like in other jobs where the companies wanted to just create more sales-oriented content. So they kind of wanted to skip over the whole actually giving value sort of phase. So, well, it's not a phase, it's an ongoing thing. But, like teaching people things and just giving more than you ask. So that's, I think, the closest situation that I have found myself in. But I have seen that, for example, what you're saying, that, there are some posts that are going to get more engagement than others. And there is that feeling that you need to focus on that because that's what gets more followers. But in the end, it's more about, there's this saying that I see all the time actually on social media. It's about going not going wide, but going narrow. So focusing more on who is a small group of people that you really want to talk to, because you can make a post that's going to attract the masses, but do you really want to attract every single person, or do you want to attract the few people that are truly going to listen and are more likely to convert or tell a friend that could convert into a sale?
Right. Diana, you also speak a lot about repurposing content. Last week I was having a conversation with the head of communications at Semrush, and we were talking about, how content could be repurposed for SEO. When it comes to social media, again, how do you go about repurposing the same content for different platforms?
So just being super aware of what is the ideal format for different platforms is the best start. Actually, let me rewind a little bit. The easiest way to do it is to just truly have an understanding of where you want to be on like where do you need to be on social media, or not just social media, but content as a whole. I mean, it could be blogs, it can be emails, and just really pick what are going to be your core platforms. Don't spread yourself too thin. And then once you have those core platforms, look at to see what's going to be the one that's going to have the most long form content and start there. Because it's easier to create that longer form content, say like the blog or the YouTube video, and scale that down into micro content, say like an IGTV post or quotes or a carousel, than doing it the other way around. You can still do it if your only platform is Instagram right now and you're trying to go elsewhere. But if you do have those other platforms like a blog or a YouTube channel, it's easier to start from there and make sure that you understand as well the things that work on other platforms. Like LinkedIn is a little bit more of a professional sounding kind of network, So if you have any kind of like profanity or, and I don't know, just like looking at your content and tailoring the copy and tailoring the visuals to work better with those platforms. But basically the skeleton of it is already done, which makes it easier on you.
And say, for example, if you have to give it from more personal experience, say you come out with a video today on IGTV or on TikTok, but which platforms are the places where you repurpose your content?
Well, right now I'm really focusing on TikTok and Instagram. So it's kind of like they kind of feed each other right now at this point. To be honest, usually it's my TikToks are becoming posts for Instagram, say like on stories, or I've been creating a lot recently. I've been on a bit of a Instagram feed break. But I'm coming back soon. So basically what I'm going to be doing is taking a lot of the TikToks that I've made and turning them to posts for the feed. A lot of them can also be stitched together to be an IGTV, but the same can go for Instagram to TikTok to repurpose stories that you've created in the past, especially if you want to get started with the platform. This is the easiest way to begin, is look to see what are some snippets that you can pull from your stories, from your IGTVs, and put it on this platform and just really edit it to make sure that you really just skip over the introduction, like, hey guys, I'm Diana or whatever. People don't care about that. They want to hear straight the tip, like, okay, here are 3 ways to help you do blank. So you always lead with that.
Interesting part is where you mentioned the feed. What is the perfect balance in terms of the feed and the story? How much content should go on the feed and how much content should go on stories on a frequent basis?
Yeah, I view my feed as a place where I put more, I don't want to say professional content really, because I'm a jokester a lot of the times too. So I do a lot of jokes on my feed. But I think of stories as a place where people can see the behind the scenes and more into my personality. It's more casual. It's more day to day. It's like, this is what I'm up to right now. But it's also a great place to test content and see if it's worth to be made into a feed post. So if there's a topic that you're unsure if it's something people would want to hear about in an IGTV carousel or whatever, then test it out on stories, talk about the topic, see how people respond, or use polls to gauge interest. So those are the 2 ways I view it, basically. So stories, I view it as a testing ground and a way to get a bit more of like a personal look into who you are. And then the feed is an educated guess based on, me listening to other people of what might do well.
Great. But mentioning about that stories, you express it very openly in terms of it's okay to have a mental block on certain days. A lot of people want to create content but are stuck up in that web of work-life balance. How do you go about planning that, or how do you go about coping up with the balance of work and life?
This has actually been a new thing for me right now because I've been through this before, but it was a bit of a different situation. Before I was working a job as like social media manager, and I had more wiggle room to play with for my own content. So I could make it work. Like I would write captions, for example. I know this sounds funny, but it's actually true. I would write captions on my bathroom breaks at my job, or participate in Facebook groups. Same thing, like during like those bathroom breaks, like 5 minutes, 2 minutes here and there would really add up. In those situations, I think people, they're looking for a solid uninterrupted hour or two, and that's not always possible. But if you look at how many pockets of time, maybe like that little minute there, 5 minutes here, that can really help you build up your presence, and also realizing that many times you're overcomplicating yourself as well. So if you have limited time, don't try to make the fanciest post with all like the craziest effects or whatever. Keep it super simple. And I think it's a really powerful learning experience as well for people in the situation to also really absorb that lesson, that sometimes the most simple content can be the most powerful content. The most simply looking content can be the most powerful content, so it is great if you can create like the cool animations and stuff like that other people do, but it's not necessary. It really comes down to knowing what your audience wants and needs to hear and communicating it as quickly and as clearly as possible.
Makes sense. Now, more from a professional level, I would love to understand the way you plan your content on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. So keen on knowing what are the recommended equipments and the management tools and the creation tools and organizing tools, all those things that you use for planning your content.
Yeah. I'm going to try and give like 2 separate breakdowns for this, because I use tools right now that are paid, but there was a time where I was super broke and I couldn't afford to use all the tools that I use right now. And that doesn't mean that needs to hold you back. So when I was getting started and I was on like a $0 budget or had like $10 to spare, if possible, I would use Trello or Airtable. Those are 2 great tools to use to do your content calendar and also kind of have like an overview of your production phases if that's something that you want to track. So what's an idea, what is being done, and what's ready to publish and what has been published, therefore meaning that it's ready to be repurposed for other platforms. So those 2 tools, free, but if you have the budget to pay for them, totally worth it. I actually still use the free version of Airtable. I'm probably going to start paying soon because I've brought on a team. That's only the really scenario where I can imagine paying for the tool, having a team that you're working with and wanting more customization features. For social media content creation, I love using Canva at the moment and Keynote. If you don't have a Mac, PowerPoint is the equivalent of Keynote. And the reason I love these 2 tools, because before I used to use the Adobe Creative Suite, and I still sometimes do for certain things, but I'm realizing I'm using it less and less. And the reason being is sometimes when you have the fanciest tools you could say out there, there's too many options and you become overwhelmed with all of the possibilities of what you can create with these tools. But when you keep it simple with a tool like Keynote or a tool like Canva, or for video in this case, Veed, it's easy really to just get down to what you really need and still achieve the same results and maximum impact through your content. So content creation, I suggest Canva if you want to really like templatize your things, especially if you're not a designer. And then for video, I know I work there, but I was a customer before I started working there. But Veed, it's seriously amazing. You can add subtitles to your videos. You can draw on video. You can add filters. Videos like Gary Vee. If you see Gary Vee's content, you can make those same amazing videos. And lastly, for scheduling content, Later has been my go-to for years now, probably like 4 years at this point or more, I think. But yeah, definitely like 4 years at least I've been using Later. And they do have a free plan. It's limited though, as far as what you can schedule on the free plan. So if you can't get a social media scheduling tool, it's not the biggest deal. There's always Facebook Creator Studio or just manually doing it. So setting alerts for yourself to post content that you've saved as a draft, if it's on Instagram or TikTok, or even YouTube, that would be the most budget-friendly way if paying for a social media scheduler isn't in the question. But I do love Later because it gives you analytics as well. And and the last one is Flick, which I use for hashtags specifically. I only use that for hashtags to really filter out what are the tags I need to be using based on the size of my audience. And that one is a paid one.
In one breath, that was. Wow.
It's a lot.
Now I'm going to ask you a little more personal question. There are a lot of content creators out there, and this happens with a lot of influencers as well. How do you not compete socially with the others? Or is it okay to compete at times?
I think a little competition is healthy, but then again, I'm a pretty competitive person. But there's a point where it can get toxic for one's mental state. So I actively make it my goal to not follow too many other people in my space, because I do tend to, fixate too much on what other people are doing. Mm-hmm. So if that's you, then definitely you don't need to follow every single person in your space. I mean, I follow a very, very few. There are people who are great and make great content, but I don't need to follow all of them, if that's going to impact the way that I'm viewing myself. And if anything, because there's always people that, you should follow because maybe you have worked with them in some way, shape, or form, then you can follow them, but you always have like the mute features as well. Mm-hmm. Which I actually use those a lot to just not see all the social media content of the people I do follow, even though they're few. So if I want to see them, it's because I am actively choosing to go and look them up and see what they've been doing.
Okay, great. So I'm going to throw 6 questions at you right now, and
I'm gonna catch them.
Yeah, I'll be very prompt in this. And okay. So ready for this?
Okay, I'm ready.
So, on bad days when you can't create content, what do?
I get away from my computer, if possible. If I'm feeling blocked, chances are I am trying to do too much and really just like diving too deep into the situation. So get away, do something else.
Mm-hmm. If Diana wasn't a content creator, she would be?
A professional dog cuddler. It is. I used to have a dog sitting business actually, so it is kind of like my number 2 passion.
Wow, nice. A lot of people look up to you for inspiration. Who do you look up to?
I know this is probably what every single person in my space says, but Gary Vaynerchuk. He's just really good.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next one. Monetizing opportunities for content creators using social media.
If you have the audience size, then trying to find ways that you can partner with brands and offer your space as a way to, do paid content with them is really huge, especially if you're like looking at like smaller brands that maybe can't waste their time with figuring out an ads budgets and hoping that it actually gets there. Your audience is very targeted. So it's a really great opportunity to go ahead and monetize that if possible.
Tips for building a social media community organically.
Talk, and listen, and collaborate. Awesome. Seriously.
And I want to know now, what's the story behind DianaGetsSocial, the name?
You know what? It was, I don't even remember the exact moment I made the name. I think I just was picking a random username. My name wasn't available. Somebody else used it. So I'm like, okay, DianaGetsSocial. There's not really like a major story. It was what was available.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I look at my username and I'm like, I don't want to say I'm not antisocial, but I am. People don't usually believe me, but I'm introverted. And so when I made my username, I was a little conflicted. I'm like, is Diana really getting social though?
Wow. Last question, and I'm excited to ask this question. So lastly, tell me why you're so awesome.
Oh my God. Do I really have to say that? I feel so like I'm inflating my own ego here or something.
No, this fits in to be a perfect bio for the podcast as well. So why are you so awesome, Diana?
Okay. Maybe because I don't really care too much about the judgment that comes from the way that I create my content. I stay as true as I can to myself, and very patient as well, to just put things out there, not have them succeed, and just really sticking to what I believe in, which I think is very hard. And I think a lot of people can get there, but patience is that underrated ingredient for a lot of them.
And I think that's why everyone loves you. The way you present yourself on social media is fantastic and inspiring at the same time.
Friend us on your socials and let's connect.
Awesome. So I'm going to put in one question from our user now. So here's a question from Shalini Gupta. She asks, it's always recommended to follow a niche when you're creating content, but if you're starting a new profile and want to create content on varied topics, will this clutter the profile, or all posts should be related to one single theme? What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the varied topics, because if you're talking about a bunch of different industries, then it can definitely get confusing. I do think it's super important to really niche down and make sure that your content is as focused as it can possibly be. But as somebody that got started in a quite general way before I really focused in on one thing, I created content about social media from a very general standpoint, and I took on all kinds of projects to kind of figure out what that space it is that I wanted to work with. And ultimately I realized, okay, I love working with software companies, specifically in like the content creation space, which is why I'm with Veed right now. So if that's your situation, then get as much experience as possible to see what that might be. If that's not the case and you just have like a bunch of really random, unrelated topics, don't do it. It's only going to penalize you, and you're basically going to be creating content that's very, very hard, maybe almost even impossible to truly make it grow and get the results that you actually want to get, because it's not focused.
Sweet. And that's pretty much it on this episode today. You're such an inspiration in your own way, and I hope you continue inspiring people the way you always do. Thank you, Diana, for being a part of the Deliberate Talks podcast, and I hope you had fun.
I did. I think this was probably one of the podcasts I've laughed in the most, I think. That's great. It was very fun and informative. So, and guys, by the way, I don't want to just inspire you. I want you to go ahead and make that post, okay? So
absolutely.
Yes. Fantastic. Take that action.
And that's it for today. This is the end of the show. I hope you guys have learned something new from Diana, and hopefully she inspires you to do something different from what you're already doing. Until next time, if you have any feedback, feel free to write it at deliberatetalks@gmail.com. You can also follow us on social media of the Deliberate Talks as well as the Pixelated Egg Digital Ventures. Join in next week for yet another episode with yet another amazing guest. So till then, inspire and be inspired.